Welcome. We are about to take a deep dive into the very heart of horror. Think of this as a journey where together we're going to map out the entire landscape of fear to figure out what it is that really gets under our skin. So let me start by asking you a question. And really think about it. Forget the loud noises and the things that jump out of closets for a second. What are you truly afraid of? Is it a monster you can actually see? Or is it more of a feeling you just can't shake? Keep that in your mind as we get started. So, where do we begin this journey? We start by looking inward, because let's face it, sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't hiding under the bed. They're living right inside our own heads. This is the horror within. And that brings us perfectly to our first major category, psychological horror. Now, the goal here isn't to make you jump out of your seat. No, it's to make you squirm. It's all about atmosphere and suspense, that creeping, chilling feeling that something is just fundamentally, deeply wrong. And a really powerful branch of this is what we can call madness horror. The terror here comes from watching a character's mind just completely break down. Think of Jack in The Shining. The horror isn't just a spooky hotel. It's being trapped inside his head as his reality shatters. You end up questioning everything right along with him. Okay, now let's take that internal psychological fear and put it in the one place where we're all supposed to feel completely safe, our own home. That's home invasion horror. It weaponizes our sense of vulnerability. It's not really about the violence, it's about the relentless, terrifying suspense of being stalked where there's nowhere to run. And finally, in this section, you've got what people call art house or elevated horror. This subgenre isn't interested in cheap thrills. Instead, it uses these really deep symbolic themes and powerful visuals to build a kind of dread that just sticks with you long after the movie's over. So, we've explored the enemy inside our own minds, but now let's look at what happens when the threat is no longer just a feeling, but a person standing right in front of you. This is all about the fear of the human monster. And there's no better example of that than the classic slasher film. You know this formula even if you don't realize you do. It's like a perfect recipe for terror. Step 1, you get a group of teens. Step 2, you introduce a relentless, usually masked killer. Step 3, you get some, let's say, creative kills. And it all leads to Step 4, the iconic final girl, the one person left who has to face the monster head-on. But of course, the human monster doesn't just stick to the suburbs. In backwards horror, just changing the location creates a whole new kind of terror. You've got city folks who get lost and run into hostile locals in some isolated, unfamiliar place. It plays on that fear of being an outsider in a place of different rules. Okay, we've talked about the mind, we've talked about the stalker. Now we escalate. Let's get into the most visceral, the most physical, and the most unflinching category of them all, the horror of blood and brutality. The philosophy here is really simple, and it's incredibly blunt. This isn't about suspense, it's about shock. The entire goal is to push right past your comfort zone and confront you with graphic, realistic violence, where absolutely nothing is left to the imagination. Now, even this kind of horror has its own distinct flavors. You've got your torture films, like the Saw series, which are all about the process of pain and suffering. Then there are cannibal films, which get their shock value by shattering a massive societal taboo. And then you have extreme cinema. Its only mission is to push every single boundary you can possibly think of. All right, we've seen the terrible things humans can do to themselves and to each other. But what about the things that aren't human at all? It's time to face the unknown, the monstrous, and the truly unstoppable. So when you look at the whole monster world, it's pretty clear that zombies are king. They really tap into our deep-seated fears about disease, losing our individuality, and society just collapsing. But of course, you've also got the ancient terror of vampires, the cosmic threat of aliens, the primal fear of werewolves, and even what you could call neo-monsters, totally new creatures, like in A Quiet Place, that create their own rules. Now, let's quickly clear something up. A classic horror mix-up, ghosts versus demons. They're not the same thing. Ghosts are usually the souls of people who have some kind of unfinished business, and they're often stuck in one place. Demons, on the other hand, are something else entirely. They are pure forces of evil, and their only goal is to create chaos and destruction. And these supernatural forces, they have a whole toolkit of ways to scare us. There's the classic haunted house, where the building itself is the enemy. There are possessions, where a person's own body becomes a war zone. And then you have things like curses and supernatural powers, which unleash these uncontrollable, terrifying forces onto the world. And if we zoom out even further, past the paranormal, we get into sci-fi and cosmic horror. This covers a huge range, from hostile alien threats and giant creatures rising up to reclaim the planet, all the way to just the desperate struggle to survive in a world that's already fallen apart. The horror here is often about the sheer scale of it all, how small and helpless we are in the face of it. So, we've mapped out all these major territories of fear. But here's the thing. These borders, they aren't solid. In fact, some of the most interesting stuff happens when horror gets complicated and starts mixing and matching genres. A perfect example is when horror makes us laugh. But there's a really important difference to understand here. A horror comedy, like Shaun of the Dead, finds real, genuine humor inside a truly scary situation. A parody, like Scary Movie, isn't actually trying to scare you at all. Its main job is just to make fun of the very horror rules we've been talking about. And you see this kind of genre blending everywhere today. You've got found footage, which uses that shaky cam style to completely blur the line between what's real and what's fake, pulling you right into the moment. And on the total opposite end, you have gothic horror, which beautifully weaves together dark romance, sadness, and supernatural dread into this haunting, atmospheric experience. So there you have it. From the deepest terrors inside our own minds to monsters from other worlds, we've covered a massive spectrum of fear. But here's the thing about this journey. It never really ends. The horror genre is always changing, always evolving, always finding new ways to get at our deepest anxieties. Which leaves us with one last lingering question. What's the thing that's going to scare us tomorrow?